You were a killer for the Mafia, loyal, brutal, and silent. Then, you broke your silence. Now, you're in solitary confinement, hated by the Mafia, hunted by the state. No protection, no deal, no escape. And everyone knows how this ends. The only question is, how brutal will it be? Whitey Bulger, the king who died like a dog. He was the Shadow King of Boston. James Whitey Bulger, murderer, extortionist, drug lord, a man who bribed politicians, paid off FBI agents, and worked for the Cosa Nostra at the same time. A man who knew so many secrets that he believed he was immortal. But when his last line of defense fell, all that remained of Whitey was an old, frail body and a name that was whispered in prisons. In 2018, Bulger was transferred to the high-security Hazleton prison in West Virginia. Just hours later, he was dead. But not just dead, executed. The surveillance cameras were suddenly out of order. The guards, gone. And 3 men entered his cell. One of them was a mafioso from Massachusetts. The other, a killer with 20 years of blood on his hands. They beat his face to a pulp. They removed his tongue, an ancient mafia sign meaning he talked. And then they left his lifeless body lying on the concrete, shattered, disfigured, destroyed. No last wish, no protection from this system. Only the silent proof. Those who work for the FBI die, as the street commands. Sammy Gravano, the snitch who destroyed Gotti. In the mafia hierarchy, there are only 2 types of men, those who kill and those who keep quiet. Sammy Gravano could do both. As underboss of the Gambino family, he had 19 murders on his conscience, at least. He was John Gotti's right-hand man, his enforcer, his shadow. But when the FBI arrested him in 1991, Gravano broke the oath he had taken when he joined. He did the unthinkable. He talked. Gravano testified against Gotti in what was probably the most spectacular mafia trial in American history. His testimony finally brought down the Teflon Don. And suddenly, Samuel was no longer a mafioso. He was a traitor, a dead man, who was only still breathing because the FBI was keeping him alive. He disappears into the witness protection program, living under a false name in different states until greed brings him back. In 2000, Gravano was arrested for drug trafficking. Ecstasy, of all things. The former mafia legend deals in teen pills and ends up back in jail. But this time he's not in solitary confinement, no longer in safe houses, but in a system full of men who know his stories and recognize his eyes. The authorities now, if they leave him in the open block, he won't live 2 days. Sammy is isolated, monitored around the clock by guards who despise him and inmates who are just waiting for their chance. He survives, yes, but in constant fear. No protection in the world can give him what he has lost: silence, respect, family. And so he lives to this day, an old man with blood on his hands and bullets in his back that were never fired. Before we show you what happened to the next traitors, think about it for a moment. If this happens to a made man, what do you think would happen to you? If the darkest secrets of the mafia fascinates you, then click like now and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss another chapter of this underworld, because this is about to get much darker. Anthony Casso, the man nobody wanted to save. He made people disappear without a trace. He blew up cars before the engines were even warm. He was the Lucchese underboss, and for many, the most dangerous man who ever lived in Brooklyn. Anthony Gaspipe Casso, a name that once struck fear into people's hearts, and later, only pity. In the 1980s, Casso was the epitome of violence. He waged war against other families, bribed cops, and executed FBI informants, and left no questions unanswered. His motto was simple: if you're not with me, you're not breathing. But when the FBI caught him in 1993, something began that no one would have thought possible. Casso talks. He reveals everything: names, places, murders. He even turns in corrupt NYPD officers who had worked for him. And with that, he signs his own death warrant. Not on the street, but in prison, because Casso thought the FBI would treat him like a treasure. But the more he talked, the less the agents liked him. He lied. He manipulated. He played games with men who had no patience for games. At some point, the FBI says enough. They break off the cooperation. Casso is thrown out of the witness protection program and ends up where he never wanted to be. In the regular block. No isolation cell, no panic button, no protection list. Just him and his past. Suddenly, he is nothing. An old, sick man with enemies in every cell. He is beaten, threatened, shunned, not out of revenge, but out of principle. In 2020, he died of COVID, alone, in filth, without assistance, without a coffin, without tears. The Mafia has long since forgotten him. The FBI had long since given up on him. And the world never waited for him. Anthony Casso, a snitch who lost everything because he wanted to betray everything. Joe Dogs, the spy they almost kicked to death. He wasn't a boss, not a killer, not a king. Joe Iannuzzi was a soldier, a small man in a big game, a guy with a nickname, debts, and a big mouth. Joe Dogs, a Gambino foot soldier who ran gambling dens in the 1980s, collected money and collected protection money. But at some point, he made mistakes, big mistakes. He messed with the wrong woman, he insulted the wrong man, and suddenly his own crew wanted him dead. So he ran, not to the family, but to the police. And he talks for hours about bosses, meetings, cash, everything he knows. The FBI loves him. He wears microphones. He sets up cameras. He becomes an informant in a suit. And then everything blows up. Before he can go into hiding, Joe is discovered, not by the police, but by those he betrayed. In prison, in the shower, they attack him. Several men, with their bare fists. He is beaten unconscious, ribs broken, teeth knocked out. A guard finds him, his face covered in his own blood. Just a fraction of a second later, and he would have been dead. He survives, yes, but what remains is a man with a broken jaw, broken honor, and a life that will never be safe again. Today, hardly anyone knows his name, only the nickname they gave him in the cell, the dead dog that got away. In prison, no lawyer, no FBI deal, no false name matters. Only one thing remains, what you are. And if you're a traitor, then you're fair game. Some die slowly, others quickly, but in the end, there's no mercy for any of them. If you want to learn more about what happens behind the walls and why some men would rather die than talk, then stick around, because this is just the beginning.